Thank you for coming. So, how did you guys get interested? You know, as documentary filmmakers, you have a lot of ideas swirling around your head and on pen and paper. How did you guys land to, let's do this documentary on Bone Thugs-n-Harmony?
So, Tanner and I had been working on our own separate projects for quite some time. He's done several documentary films. I've done a lot of documentary television work. We kind of just said, hey, it would be really cool to collaborate on a musical story. And so that's kind of where the juices started flowing creatively, I think, on that. And, you know, while we were discussing that, we thought, man, it'd be great to do a golden era 90s hip hop story. Okay, who are the artists that haven't had their story told or told properly yet? So we were looking at individuals, groups, whatever. And that's really where I think Bone popped back into mind was, wow, this legendary group that everybody knows and most people love, you know, at least some of their music, and they don't really have a story out there that's accessible. And so that was interesting to us. I think we were like, hey man, it's got to be told. Like they've achieved so much in their long career. Okay, you know, let's try to tackle that. And so that was I think the initial inception.
So basically you were fans first and then got into the subject matter.
For sure. We were both fans of the music, and like you, I grew up listening to them and really enjoying them. But then as you go about your life and things change, I'd kind of lost touch with that. I hadn't really listened to them in quite some time. So in the moment that I think we were thinking of how cool it would be to go track them down and try to tell their story, I was like, where are they now? You know, and I think a lot of people felt that way, but they had still been putting out music. I just personally had lost touch with it. And so to then go back and revisit a lot of the old albums during researching and development, that was really fun. Yeah, you really do forget that they just have so many hits and just so many great songs over so many years. I'm blabbering. Do you want to add something to this? Okay.
So what year? What was the month and year, if you remember, when you guys started doing this project? Was it before Straight Outta Compton came out, or was it after Straight Outta Compton?
It was before. We started talking about it, I think, in 2014, right?
Yeah, 13. The end of 13.
End of 2013, we began talking about it, and then our initial, I think, treatment we wrote, Thug Redemption, was the summer of 2015. And then when we first met them was September of 2015. So we didn't know about Straight Outta Compton when that happened. You want to add something?
Yeah, it was so cool meeting them, because obviously we know their old music, but when our initial time to like ever connect with them with cameras for the first time, of course we were all a little nervous, but we were going to Toronto, and what was ironic, it was their first time to ever play Toronto, so they actually played Creepin' on a Come Up, right? Yeah, so their entire album, so like...
Well, it was that and East 1999.
It was the East 1999 Eternal album, but it was essentially their first time to get to play their original stuff forever, so like they were hyped on it. So it wasn't just like seeing a Bone show, it was like seeing a Bone show in the 90s again, even for them, because it was the first time they'd ever played Canada as a group. And we were just like, I remember me and Tim, after all the work and preparation and the, meetings and stuff like that to even try to get this thing off the ground. I remember like sitting back when the first song started in Toronto, like during the film festival out there. So it was just a madhouse. And I just remember thinking like, this is going to be awesome. So, and then cut to like, 3.5 years later where, we're sitting here in Dallas, like, I haven't even thought about that until you just brought it up, so I appreciate you letting me go down memory lane.
So how hard was it to track them down and to get to their management company and to get them to agree to this?
Yeah, there were challenges with that. It was definitely an unconventional process, I would say. So Tanner, once we came up with the idea and talked about it for about a year, then Tanner met one of their former producers, Romeo Antonio, who has done a lot of music with Mo Thugs and Crazy Bone and several of the other guys. So we met him. So we had a meeting with Rome and pitched him the idea. And so he liked it and was really the one who opened the door for us to go to Toronto for that first time. Yeah, and go right in and meet. It was Crazy, Lazy, Busy, and Wish. Flesh wasn't there our initial time in Toronto. So Rome really opened the door for us to be able to go meet the guys. And then as we got to know them and start to build a relationship with them, we got to know Steve. And once Steve came on board, that's when the wheels really started turning. He's definitely the man when it comes to all things. So the train just
took off from the station and kept on rolling.
Right, yeah.
So after you saw Straight Outta Compton, after it came out, obviously they didn't really touch on Bone Thugs-n-Harmony, which I think is kind of it's a shame they didn't, because Bone Thugs-n-Harmony was an integral part of Eazy-E in that era.
Sure.
So did the movie affect how you were developing the documentary? Were you like, okay, they didn't talk about this in the movie?
A little bit. I'll pass it to you. I would say yes, in the sense that I remember I really enjoyed Straight Outta Compton. It was a very well-made film and really entertaining and informative. And like we all know, you can't fit all the details in 2 hours or an hour and a half or whatever. So I do recall when I watched it, the fact that they sort of just glazed over Bone a little bit was, I think, frustrating as a fan and as a filmmaker who was working with them at that time, because I knew that the reality is that Eazy-E and Bone had a much deeper friendship and relationship, and from everything I've been told and heard, he really loved those guys, and really believed in them, and was actually very active in their first couple records. So I would say that as a filmmaker, once I saw that, I knew that I wanted to include something in the story about the relationship with Eazy-E and the history, to just let that resonate with people, that, hey man, it wasn't just, I'm going to lay my cassette tape on the hospital table and I'll listen to it later kind of thing. No disrespect to how those guys decided to tell that story. It is what it is. But they got it in there, but it was a whole lot more than that. And so I wanted to make sure that came through in Sons of St. Clair.
Because, let's be honest, Eazy-E died, may his memory be the blessed, for, March 26th of 95. And, Creeping on the Kamah came up, in 92, 93. So, yeah, there was just several years that Bone was in, Eazy-E's life, and Eazy-E's life was in Bone. So
I believe they had, and Bone fans, don't quote me on this, but I believe they had the majority of East 99 recorded at the time he passed away. And then they came back and did the remix for the Crossroads. But yeah, so to your point, Creeping on a Come Up and East 99 were both pretty much done under Eazy's guidance and oversight.
Because to my understanding, For the Love of Money was Eazy's last appearance in a music video, and that was shot in 91, 92. And then East 1999 came out a few years later.
Yep.
So, I'm a big hip-hop fan. I went to Compton for the first time back in 2001, 2002. So what was it like to go to Cleveland and go to St. Clair and East 99th Street for the first time, and just what did you see? What were you feeling?
It was incredible, and I think speaking for Tanner and myself, so we went out there not planning for this to happen, but we went out there to get B-roll of the city initially for our first trip. We went there several times to Cleveland, but on the very first trip, we went out there to get B-roll, and so we had been filming all over the city since very early. We got up for some dawn shots, and then we were out at East 99 in St. Clair in the neighborhood, and that was very surreal to be there and see the sign and a lot of the imagery that they're so famous for with their albums and music videos and everything. And so we came back from filming B-roll that day. We're at the hotel, and we're watching the Cavs-Warriors game. And we're in the hotel in Cleveland. The game was in the Bay Area. And so we're watching the game on the TV, and the whole crew's in there. We're together watching the game, and everybody's exhausted. But with about 3 minutes left in the game, we realize these guys are probably going to win. And if they win the championship. So Tanner's like, camera's outside right now. So we fired them back on, ran out into the street, and caught the moment where all the fans poured out into the streets from the bars and restaurants.
And that's in the movie. It's a very powerful but proud moment.
It really is. And I think we kind of looked at each other and just said, man, this is meant to be.
It's the money shot.
Yeah. I'll let you elaborate on that, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, even just to all of a sudden you felt like a Clevelander yourself, and we had spent so much time there. We've got to know the people of the city, and it was so much bigger than just a basketball game that day, and to be able to like be a part of it and feel and capture it on camera and stuff was a really cool feeling, especially after having traveled to the places that we're telling the story from. It's like you became the storyteller of that, and that being a chapter in our piece, on this meant so much. And even in the doc, when you see it, those guys, they talk about it a lot and how much bigger it was than just a basketball game. Cleveland itself is a character in this story, and it's a music doc, but it's also like an American dream doc. It's on a lot of different levels of storytelling with this, and you get to be a fly on the wall during the creative process, which is a pretty cool deal.
So let's talk about filming in the neighborhood. What I was really impressed by the documentary is you got some very unprecedented access to the neighborhood and its residents. So what was the reactions when two white guys show up with cameras filming this documentary and ask them questions?
Yeah.
What was the reaction of the residents, and how did they warm them up to you? What did you do to make them more? How did you gain their trust?
Well, I would say we definitely got some strange looks. Two white boys driving around in a van with a camera. There were some strange looks for sure.
You weren't the cops' camera crew or anything, right?
Yeah.
We were like the FBI out there or something sometime in that van, because we had a big film truck.
Right.
We got some strange looks for sure, but another one of the just kind of really spectacular moments out in East Cleveland in the neighborhood that really meant a lot, where we just knew, again, man, this is meant to be, was when we met Daniel Gray Contar. Daniel, yeah. So anyway, he is just an incredible man, and from the community. He's from Glenville, and he lives out there still, and he has an organization called the 12 Literary Arts Incubator. And so it's a place for young people, in the hood, to come after school and have a safe place to come learn about art and express themselves in a place where they can come and create and learn about art. And so once we met him and he welcomed us with open arms, he had actually done some journalism about Bone previously, we decided to have a poetry slam. And so we did that with young poets from East Cleveland, from Bone's neighborhood, who basically came up with original poems that were inspired by the music and lyrics of Bone. And so Daniel hosted us out there, and we got to spend some time with him at 12, and then at a place in East Cleveland and have that poetry slam. And that was just really an incredible experience where we finally got to really sit down and talk to a lot of the people from the neighborhood. And sure enough, you talk to each one of them, male, female, does not matter. They all are very proud of Bone and what they've done, being that they're from there and have achieved such greatness on an international level. I think that it was really cool to hear it from their mouths that, hey, these guys inspired us, and we're just so proud to be, from Cleveland and from East Cleveland.
Yeah. How long were you guys in Cleveland for?
I'll let you take that.
Yeah. Well, we made probably 6 trips total. One was more of a location scout initially, just to get a handle on the city, to know what kind of crews to bring back. But hats off to all the local people we used in Cleveland. Speaking of East 99 and St. Clair again, when we were out there with our drones, we kind of split up camera crews, but before we went and did a lot of the rolling around shots in the really undiscreet van that looked super sketch in an interesting neighborhood anyway. We were the sketchy ones at that point.
The FBI surveillance.
Yeah, we were just and I was like, I'm uncomfortable, but because I'm making everybody else uncomfortable. But the drone stuff flying around, I just remember thinking that's not a street where normally drones are flying around, and that was such a crazy experience looking back on it. And just calling a spade, it's a little bit more of it's not the main part of Cleveland. It's an outside suburb. Maybe it doesn't have as much funding and stuff. So flying, a spaceship all around there's probably people that have never seen a drone, young kids being like, what on earth is, in my backyard? That was one of the most memorable times, I think. But I think we went to Cleveland. I mean, we're regulars there. I think we go to Cleveland now, and Tim and I have our own coffee cups, at certain places.
We're there.
We're there for the Cleveland International Film Festival, which is another place that obviously this movie made a splash at because Cleveland was such a big character in it. But Bone's music is so universal and so global. And again, it's funny, you hear like, oh, what's two white guys making this? It's like, well, you know what? It's like I said, the story is so much bigger than just a specific kind of genre of music to a specific kind of people that may listen to it or may not listen to it. This is such a triumphant story. This is a filmmaker. Tim's a filmmaker. We all see this as like such a bigger story than just them making an album, and that's really excites me, because you see all these great docs these days. There's so many great docs, and it's like, well, this one I feel is right up there with the great storytelling that I get inspired by when I see some docs. This is probably the fourth one I've made, and definitely my most proud, accomplishment in a music doc for sure.
The drone shots were just incredible. I mean, it made everything look beautiful.
They were legal.
Shout out to DroneWorks.
DroneWorks.
Yeah. Well, there's an airport right on the water there in Cleveland, right next to the Browns Stadium.
So you had to go through the FAA, and
so we did that. We did it all legit, and those guys came out and did a great job, man.
Well, let's talk about the local crews and the support from the city, if they give you any, because Cleveland is not really a place where Hollywood just shows up. So what kind of support did you get from the city itself, and what were the locals like? I mean, talk about the local crews, because I would imagine that there's not a lot of experience there. You had to do a lot of on-the-job training, which is very valuable.
Yeah, believe it or not, they've got a lot of talented crew there. We brought most of our people with us, but I will say DroneWorks were phenomenal with the aerial work, and obviously Daniel from the talent side of things coming on, and he really is, like Tanner said, Cleveland is a character in this film, and he's really the voice of Cleveland.
I think Cleveland is a bigger character than Bone Thugs.
It is, but I would say I got to give a shout out to Joel Trent, who was our sound mixer there on the ground, and he was local from Cleveland, and he actually he does a lot of great work there in the city, audio wise, but he was a sound mixer on the LeBron James doc More Than a Game, which was directed by my good friend Christopher Bellman. So that was a cool tie-in. That's actually how we found him. Chris pointed him out to us. But so yeah, every time we went to Cleveland, we brought our own folks with us, except for Joel, and he was really our tried and true guy on the ground there. Very talented audio guy.
So once you got into the post facility, how much footage did you have? How much ended up in the cutting room, and how much is going to end up in the DVD Blu-ray extras when it comes out?
That's a great question.
How many terabytes? Do you know how many terabytes?
Yeah. At one point, the last time I checked, and I'm sure we tacked on some more, but at one point it was 20.
Wow.
It was 20 terabytes at one point, and I know we have more than that now, but I guess, what the real story of it is, so the initial film that we set out to tell is called Thug Redemption. In 2015, that was the treatment we wrote, and that was more of a straight biographical piece of the history of Bone, all five guys. And so we chugged along with that for a while. And Steve Lobel, we still have a ton of footage and interviews that have yet to be seen, obviously, that just weren't right for Sons of St. Clair. But Steve Lobel alerted us to the fact that while we were in process, that Crazy and Busy we're gonna split off and record New Waves, the duet record. And that was something that the Bone fans had been begging for 20 years, was to see those guys. What could those two guys go do together? And so we just thought, man, this is really interesting.
It's like Inception of documentaries. So we made a doc within a doc.
Right.
Correct. And so when we kind of pivoted to tell the Sons of St. Clair story, we did a new treatment. We were able to utilize, obviously, some of the B-roll and stuff that we had, but then we went and really shot things very specific to the storyline of what Sons of St. Clair was. And so, to answer your question in a long roundabout way, we have a ton of data and media and footage from the 3 years, and I think we're really excited to see what we can do with the rest of it as well.
Such a larger part to the story.
Sure.
So let me ask you this. So, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences has an archive, so if you're going to do a movie about old Hollywood, you go to that archive and fumble through the papers and look through scripts. So what was your archive? I mean, I know you did a lot of in-person, on-the-ground interviews, but What did your research department, where did they go for their information?
I wish that we had a research department, but you're looking at it.
All right.
Tanner Beard and myself really just did a lot of our own research for archival clips, of course. And then I think one of the greatest moments from a B-roll standpoint was really Art Serrano from the Life Entertainment, which is Crazy Bones' company, had been on tour with them much longer than us. He's been to thousands of Bone shows over, I think, like a 10-year span. And so he had filmed a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff and on stage and in the crowd and everything around their live shows, and had it on a hard drive. And once we got that from Art, it made our lives in the edit bay a lot better when we knew, hey, we can make this thing more dynamic by utilizing a lot of that archival footage. So that was just a wealth of material.
Where did you get your research from for Eazy-E? Did you reach out to Tamika, which is Eazy-E's widow, or how did you get assistance on telling the Eazy-E side of Bone Thugs?
We didn't reach out to her. Steve and Busy and Crazy, and obviously the guys have a very good relationship with her, so they talked to her. We did get an opportunity to do a brief interview, and it's a little bit of it is in the film with Eazy's former partner and his daughter, EB. And so that was a really cool experience to hear some of those firsthand stories from them. And so a little bit of that is in there. But really, there's a lot of accessible old clips of Eazy-E, fortunately, for us. And then I think that, just woven in with the guys telling the story about it, it works nicely.
Yeah, and also what's kind of lovely about this particular doc, well, first of all, you just don't see any, there is no docs on this group at all in any regard. And I love that this one's not just like a tiny little history piece, because you're going to need like 6 hours, 7 hours to tell these guys' entire story. It's a series, without question. That's something more like Thug Redemption, which we're still trying to carry on. But this, we just felt like, man, the timing is so right. Eazy-E's daughter came up. They're so excited, and again, going off of that.
She's sorry to jump in, but just to remind you, she's doing, because I just thought of it, she's doing that doc about her dad.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So she's working on a doc. She got us excited about their like kind of legacy and history and everything else, and incorporating that in. She jumped at the opportunity. But what's so cool is where people may not be able to spend the time of the research, the hours and hours of research to compile all this. What's cool is there's such a great segment in there of maybe probably unseen stuff with Eazy and Bone, and how he really did pass the torch and completely endorse these guys, and their story about how they met him is so fascinating. And it's not even in the doc, just there's so much footage in there, but to see them tell the story from each and every voice and it all be so close, we wanted to do a little montage of those guys just telling their story about how they came out on a bus, literally called Eazy-E's company until somebody answered, and just were totally squeaky wheels with, it was a different time. They were all like 15 years old, 16 years old. And for me, that's where it just blows my mind of just, the old cliche, never give up until you achieve your dreams. And I'm like, that's what this doc is to me. And that's why I think their music can resonate with each and every individual. And then they have this kind of Juilliard style talent that you would not assume would come from East 1999 and St. Clair. I mean, that's hence the title, the Sons of St. Clair and their journey. And this really does touch on where they're at right now and everything else, which is just, exciting to get out to an audience for the first time.
Well, if I may, one thing I would love to, just because you reminded me as well, one thing I'd love to say is, looking at the storytelling for this film in particular, for Sons of St. Clair, obviously you want to hear from Crazy and Busy, most importantly, the two main characters. And then from there, we discussed Daniel, who's so important because he really was the voice of Cleveland and brought life to that portion of the story. And then tying in with Eazy-E and the music and the archives and the history of everything is DJ Unique. And so I looked at it as there's 4 pillars holding up this building that we're creating. Crazy, Busy, Daniel, and then Tim Middleton, DJ Unique. And once we talked to him and he agreed to come be involved, and that was amazing, because all of a sudden, yes, we're telling the story about new waves, and they're in the studio now, and what's the music now sounding like, and what are the plans for the future. But hey, we need a voice to bring life to the past, and I think Tim, DJ Unique, does that so beautifully, because he really was the producer in the room there for all that original new, the archival music.
And a lot of people don't realize that, he remixed the Crossroads. The Crossroads was originally supposed to be, was about Wally, one of the friends of the group. And then, DJ Unique went in, and of course they put in Eazy-E after he passed away.
Don't forget Uncle Charles, man.
Uncle Charles, yeah. Uncle Charles. And it's just such a powerful film that it's just so... It's such a powerful film, powerful song, and a powerful music video. So going back to getting on the Greyhound bus and spending their last dollar, going to Eazy-E and trying to contact him, I was looking through the album Creep Upon the Coma. Eazy-E's phone number's in there. It says contact Eazy-E for inquiries.
It's amazing.
And it was just
the
amazing.
good old days.
Good old days.
Yeah. That wouldn't happen now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. It would be his Twitter handle.
But most people don't realize that Eazy-E was that accessible, that you could call Ruthless Records up in California and go,
Wild West of hip hop.
It really was, and I think that is so interesting as well, because Eazy was really a businessman. He didn't set out initially to be a rapper. I mean, I learned that from the Straight Outta Compton film and people telling me stories. But, Eazy-E was a businessman first. And then I think Dre and Cube and those guys were the ones that really got him in the booth as a lyricist and an MC. And so I think he probably just never lost that. And when Bone came around, that's honestly what made them so successful. I mean, of course, they had the talent and the uniqueness and the look and all those things you need. They got the X factor, that intangible thing that you just can't quantify that makes somebody a star, right? But they had that, but Eazy-E had the business side of it. And so, like we touch on, I think Unique talks about it in the film, he's out there banging the pavement, going into radio stations, and 2 weeks later, there's songs on the radio simply because he was a hustler and a hard worker. So
I think what most people don't realize that, Arabian Prince has said this in multiple interviews on YouTube, that Eazy-E was the neighborhood pharmaceutical technician, and that Dre and MC Ren and them and Ice Cube got him to invest in the NWA album and the record labels and stuff like that.
Sure.
And then, of course, they got him into the booth to Cruising Down the Street, My 6'4". We've seen that in Straight Outta Compton album. So I think what most people don't realize, that gang members have to be really slick businessmen in order to survive. And I think that's what Eazy-E, and I believe to this day that if Eazy-E was still alive, that he would be as rich or even richer as Dr. Dre, because he would get into apps and movies and, all the new technology and stuff, because Eazy-E, was really into, pressing CDs. I mean, they had to press vinyl and cassettes, but he was really one of the first rappers or record companies to really mass produce CDs. And of course, he was just a small record company, but, he had the tools and the people that he did. So when did you guys finish? When was this the finished product? What was the time frame on that?
Too long ago.
Yeah, I would say January. January is when we finished what we're calling the festival cut, which is
and
what you have.
And the album came out in December.
The album came out last June, July.
June, July?
No, it was after that. Their album?
Yeah, the New Waves album.
Right.
Don't quote me on that.
All right, sometime in the fall.
Yeah, so the album had come out, and the film was done, which as we discussed, with just the massive amount of media that we had, it took quite some time in the edit bay. So Chris Mitchell, who's our amazing editor, just really knocked it out of the park, and we spent a lot of time combing through and fine tuning and refining the story. But we finished the festival cut in January. Took it to the Mammoth Film Festival in California in February, where we won Best Doc, which
got great reviews. And
that was really exciting.
That's where you guys got on the map of the festival circuit, was from that film festival.
that was an amazing experience. Winning Best Doc was really fun. And then, as Tanner mentioned, taking it to Cleveland.
So let's talk about Cleveland.
Yeah.
What was that like for you guys to bring it home?
Bringing it home to Bone's hometown was incredible. We were just thrilled to share the film with the city and the people there. And Crazy was there, and Wish came, and a lot of other Kane, who is an artist with Bone Thugs and Harmony. And
First of all, I was nervous about it a little bit because I was like, oh man, this is for you guys.
yeah, we really were interested at how people were going to react, because I think we make a strong statement in the film about the city. And then once we got there, we had 3 sold out theaters, which was really cool. And then during the Q&A after the film on both days, I think the most special moment for me was 2 different comments from 2 different people, different days, said that the film inspired them in a way that they felt similar to when they watched Black Panther. And that, I mean, just made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. You know, that was, I think, the highest praise that I could have imagined for people to feel that way about this movie. So to be in Cleveland and have people receive it that way, and the outpouring of love was awesome.
From like the same street, you know, the people off of St. Clair. Oh, I was just mentioning, you know, that's not just like, oh, hey, I loved a superhero movie, and it felt like that. It was like, these are like, you know, they live on 103rd in St. Clair, and they live on 88th in St. Clair, and like, you know, so to agree with Tim on that, it was like, man, that's a special, you know, thing to have said about a documentary, essentially, you know.
So how does it feel to bring this home? You guys are Dallas kids, and I know you've had several films in this.
Yeah, it's
film
my
festival
4th Dallas International Film Festival.
So you're an alumni, a veteran of this film festival?
My fifth time to come here, but 4th time to have something in it.
So how does it feel to bring it home, bring your family, and let the hometown see it?
Man, you know, Tim and I were kind of talking about that the other day. It doesn't get much better. You know, I think it's like one of those things where if you were to apply it to sports, it's like if you grew up, you know, being a Dallas Cowboys fan, but you played for like the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns happen to be playing the Cowboys, it's like that feeling of like, well, I know I don't live here, but I'm from here, and like to get to play in my hometown where like my neighborhood, you know, friends and family can come like down the street and watch me. It's kind of that feeling, you know. It's like being in the NFL, but getting to play like where you're at Cowboy Stadium, you know.
That's awesome.
To get to come to Dallas International for me, but for me it's even more special. I just was talking to James outside, and I was like, man, it's crazy. In 2011, the first movie I ever made, you know, Dallas premiered for me, and I've never forgotten it, and I'll never forget it. You don't forget your first one, but each and every year, this festival's in its 12th year, and I was just coming by, and I was just like, man, this festival's so special to me, and get to have another project here, and to get to be here, man. I hope to have many more years to come where we're showing movies in Dallas and keeping it home. But you know, I'm a Snyder, Texas boy, but this gentleman next to me is like literally from down the street, so I'll let him answer the question as well.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's a dream come true, for real, to be here in Dallas with this film. I grew up in Plano, went to Texas Tech. I love Texas. We both do. Still come back here often, several times a year. Even though Tanner and I moved to Los Angeles and we call LA home at the moment, we absolutely love Texas. We love Dallas. We're still getting together on Sundays out in LA and rooting for the Cowboys. Yeah. So, honestly, to be able to make this film about the legendary Bone Thugs and Harmony and come home and show it in Dallas is just, there are no words. It's really, really cool. Yeah, I'm very, very proud.
So what's next for the film? You guys are going to continue the wonderful festival circuit. What happens after that?
I don't know. I think
I want this thing to be out.
Yeah, I think, you know what, our main goal now is to bring it to the public so everybody can enjoy it. So that's, you know, we got some things going on in the works behind the scenes on that. So
things are cooking.
Things are cooking. For me, and I think Tanner would agree, the most important thing to us is to not just find the home or find the quickest home, it's to find the right home. we want to make sure that, you know, with all the blood, sweat, and tears that everybody who worked on this film put into it, that we find the right home for it, and that people can see it and enjoy it.
And I was just going to say too, the New Waves album that has been out, it was definitely put out, but I think with this film, if it were able to, you know, match the 1-year anniversary of when that album, you know, hit, I don't think it got the launch that maybe it necessarily deserved or could have, because you listen to that album and you hear the songs in this, and I mean, I've seen this thing a lot. Tim's seen it twice as many times as I have, and every time I watch it, I'm still like,
I know exactly.
It's so good. And Bone is known for featuring so many artists. I mean, they're the only group that's ever done. There's one or two songs that all 5 members are on, so it's
right.
You're still getting your Bone Thugs and Harmony fix. But what's cool is, you know, Bone is known for, you know, featuring so and so. That's every one of their most amazing hits, and it's kind of why
They're so giving. They're a very giving group.
amazing. I mean, everybody from Mariah Carey to the only group to ever do Eazy-E, Tupac, and Biggie, which are obviously so relevant right now with just
Right.
everything that's going on. That's why I love the timing of this particular documentary. But, you know, even above that, you know, God, you name somebody, you know, who we talking, Phil Collins, you know, I mean, just people you wouldn't even think about. So what's cool about this album is there's a lot more newer artists, you know, and we got to interview so many people that were like, man, my first time I ever heard Bone, I was 15, and I never, you know, it inspired me to want to sing music, not just rap. So that's what's so cool about this album in general, and I think the documentary touches on that, but it's not just about that. It's not a promotional piece for this album. It just happens to be the central focus. And one of the coolest things that I've never seen in any docs, and I'm a documentary fan, you never get to be a fly on the wall during the creative process. And so many artists are so hesitant to watch the growth of how a song becomes a song that, you know, some people don't want to see them without their makeup on. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's one of my favorite things I love about this doc. It's so many things. It's not just a Bone Thugs and Harmony documentary. It's the Sons of St. Clair's, like, you know, it's a good piece. And I got to commend my director Tim Newfang for keeping that, you know, spirit throughout the entire process and never leaving it, because it's a crazy shoot, man, when you're on tour and you don't know, you know, things formulate themselves and this and that. So you know, hats off to this, and I see it doing very big things. I really do.
What's next for you guys professionally?
Yeah, we got a lot of things cooking. Tanner's got several movies in development right now. We're talking with Steve and Busy and Crazy about some more Bone Thugs projects, actually. I'm in the middle of a campaign for Gatorade right now, you know, that I've been working on for the last several months.
Launched today, I think.
Yeah, Bryce Harper yesterday, yeah. And then, yeah, we've got another documentary project in development that's unrelated to Bone. Just several things in the cooker, man. We're just
It's good times.
we're hungry. We're ready to work. Yeah.
Silver Cell Entertainment, just shameless self-promotion is in
Yep.
store for me for the next couple hours.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, to round this out, 2 more questions. Number 1, what is your favorite Bone Thugs and Eazy-E song?
Wow, man, that's gonna be a tough question. I'm gonna just think about that for 1 sec. Sorry, and we'll edit this part out. Do you want to go ahead?
Well, I've always, one of the biggest intrigues I had about doing this was I just always wanted to go to Busy and ask him what he actually said when he's like 7 a.m. and creeping, and that's probably my favorite is it's Bone and Biggie, but man, that song they do with Tupac, and not to just bring it back to Tupac or whatever, but those songs are just so dope. That it's just so, I mean, it's timeless. It's literally timeless, but just to keep it to them, I mean, probably my alarm clock on my phone has been first of the month, I think, for about 8 years now.
That's
so
awesome.
I'm going to say first of the month is probably my favorite song.
What about an
from them.
Eazy-E song?
Yeah, and then Eazy-E, I mean, it's just classic. I mean, just the good old-fashioned, you know.
Yeah. All right, you're going first of the month.
First of the month for me.
Because I mean, I love so
You want me
many.
to tell you mine so you can?
Well, no. I know what mine is.
right.
I had to think about it for a second because I really do love so many. Clearly, I love Everyday Thing. I really do.
Awesome.
It's an unexpected one, I know.
How's that one go?
It's an everyday thing when you let.
I just wanted to get it.
Yeah.
What's yours? I gotta hear it.
Yeah, I'm going everyday thing. It's
right.
unexpected, I know, but man, that song bangs, and I love the way that they each come in with their verses several different times, as opposed to just one verse and then they're out, the next one's in. They kind of weave and blend it together, where I think all 5 of them are featured at least twice on that track. So I love that song. The production of it is very different from a lot of the typical bone sounds that people are used to. I love that song.
For me, I would say I rediscovered Land of the Heartless off the East 1999 album. I mean, to me, just the beats and the way the rap and the vibe of that song, I mean, it's raw, you're in there. I've always been a big fan of The Crossroads, always been fan of Love Money. My favorite Eazy-E song is Real Motherfucking G's.
Yeah, that's my favorite Eazy-E song as well.
And I know it's a diss towards Dre and Snoop and Death Row. I'm a big Dre and Snoop and Death Row fan, but to me, that song was really raw when it came out.
Yeah.
It was in your face. It was, some rap songs are like, they're just reporting, but with Eazy-E especially, and Bone Thugs, they were participants. They weren't just reporting, they were participants.
Sure.
And that's what I think really appealed. A lot of people really liked their music because they were participants. They weren't just reporting or saying, this happened. They weren't studio gangsters, as Eazy-E would say.
Right.
They were participants. I mean, they were there.
Still, like, even the Mo Thugs album.
Yeah.
There's some good ones.
Those songs that are jam.
I'll tell you
Ghetto
what.
Cowboy
I'll
too.
tell you. Yeah, and actually, Romeo. I was gonna say Romeo Antonio produced on that. The guy we mentioned. The first Bone song I ever heard, because most people around our age, the first track they ever heard was Thuggish Ruggish Bone. But for me, it was actually No Surrender. That was the first song I ever heard, and I'll never forget it. And I love all genres of music, and back then I was listening to a lot of hip hop, West Coast stuff, but a lot of rock and alt music as well. And I'll never forget the first time I heard No Surrender, like you're saying, with that raw storytelling and the picture they were painting and the rapid cadence and the uniqueness to the production and everything. I was just blown away by that. It got me hooked.
Speaking of their cadence, I mean, that has not been replicated. I mean, I've seen YouTube videos and papers, written on their cadence. But yeah, I mean, it was really easy too, really unique because, if you look at Real Motherfucking G's by Eazy-E, and then you look at For the Love of Money, they're 2 different songs that Eazy-E raps on. And just, they're just wonderful songs. So those are my 2. So websites, social handles, where can we find more about the film? And where can film festival programmers go book you?
Yeah, check us out on @Sons of St. Clair and @Silvercell Entertainment. He's @Tanner Beard. I'm @Tim Newfang. And anybody out there that wants to chat, we're open to it. So we're around.
I think it's one of,
come get us.
I'm a head of projections for this film festival. I see a lot of films at film festivals. So I think this is one of the must-see documentaries of 2018. So we really do appreciate you bringing it to Dallas, and thanks for sitting down and chatting with us.
Dev, thank you. Yeah, really, really fun.
You know your Bone Thugs.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
All right.